Qué Golazo YouTube family and friends, smash that like button and subscribe. Get busy in the chats as James Bench, hopefully Mike Lahoud, and I break down Tuesday's action coming right up. Welcome everybody to Qué Golazo. That's right, Jonathan Johnson here, filling in for Luis Miguel Echegaray this Tuesday. James Benj, hopefully Mike Lahoud and I will be picking through Liverpool against Manchester United, Inter Milan versus AC Milan, and lots more. Qué Golazo begins right now. Hey everybody, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Friendly welcome to James Bench, who will be joining me for the start of this, hopefully to be joined by Mike Lahoud very soon. James, how you doing?
Yeah, great. Just fresh from an increasingly familiar... I mean, I love games like Liverpool, Manchester United, because from a purely professional point of view, I mean, you're done at half time. Like, easy peasy. I knew how this game was going about 5 minutes in. So, yeah, report was written nice and early. Beer after this. Happy days.
To be honest, given the way that United's form has been of late, you probably could have had some of that match report written before you even sat down to watch the game. It just feels so predictable at this moment in time that United will fall flat in these big games. I mean, were you surprised at the way that Liverpool were able to dismantle United? I mean, looking at the scenario now, Liverpool back on top of the Premier League, at least temporarily until Manchester City play. United's top four hopes, up in jeopardy once more. I mean, was this really anything other than what we expected coming into the game?
Yeah, it absolutely was. I mean, so you see the lineup come out, and it's clear that United are playing a back five. And you kind of can extrapolate things from that. Like, they'll keep things compact. They've probably got an eye on Arsenal, and that's fine. Playing Arsenal on Saturday, maybe they should think we'll focus on that. We'll just see if we can get a point from this. We're not going to go hell for leather. But they played with a back five and about 60 yards of space between the front, between the forwards and the back line. Harry Maguire, I know we talk about the errors he commits a lot, but these are ultra basic things. Like, if you are tracking a forward into midfield, don't let him turn and pick a pass. I mean, you kind of saw Phil Jones being bared down on by Alexander-Arnold, Mane, and Luis Diaz, and you're thinking, is this fair? Is this, is this reasonable thing? And so this is, without wishing to kind of go into cliches of this is Manchester United, it is Manchester United. It's one of their biggest away games of the season. It's a hugely significant moment. And I think even after everything we've said about how this team acts like it's on the beach, how it doesn't want to be there, I was still shocked at the lack of application of the first 45 minutes, the lack of intensity, the lack of a plan. Some of that falls on Ralph Rangnick, but this was unacceptable from the footballers. And, they act and have acted for years with impunity, like they can get away with anything. But, and Rangnick has not been a great addition to the coaching staff and, has not solved many of the problems. But, like, this was years of chickens coming home to roost. It was absolutely diabolical, and the sort of game that would make you want to sack your playing staff if that were possible.
I'm delighted to say that we're joined by Mike Lahoud finally. I'm not so happy to be bringing Mike in at this point of the chat, because I know from the Manchester United point of view that must have made for pretty difficult listening, but also would have made for really difficult watching as well.
It's good to see you, JJ. It's good to see you, Ben. And before both of you start, let me take just a sip of water and just before I go on my damn rant today. Harry Maguire, we'll start with you. What the hell? What was that? At fault for 3 of the goals. We'll spare him the 4th. At fault for 3 of the goals, all 3 goals before the 4th. Landing because he doesn't track his runner. The first goal, he doesn't even go with Mane. Sadio Mane could be up for Ballon d'Or because of this game alone. Just shambles FC. That's Shambles United. I wish it was FC. Shambles United. It was as a United fan, it's just so hard to watch. And I agree with Benj, what you said about just lifeless, listless, always going to be a difficult game, but to go into Anfield and play a 3-4-3 for one of the first times we've seen in a long time, I didn't agree with that. I just thought Phil Jones coming into the game like that, always going to be difficult. And it just washes away any hype, any half belief that this team built in that thrilling victory against Norwich. I know it's Norwich, but you still have to beat who's in front of you. And and this photo sums it up. Harry Maguire, it gets worse and worse and worse. He needs the England camp to come sooner rather than later, because he seems to show up for England, just not for Manchester United.
Well, before we get deeper into the Manchester United chat, obviously all credit to Liverpool. Still had to go out there, get the result, did so. Minimal fuss, and a lovely touch as well from the fans. Since we last did the podcast, Cristiano Ronaldo and his family, had some dreadful, tragic news. And I think that the football community came together as it does so well at times like these. Their behaviour was very touching, and in very good taste. I feel at Anfield with the tribute in the 7th minute to the Portuguese superstar and his family at this desperately sad time. Overall, I think as well, Liverpool it kind of felt like they could have rubbed more salt into the United wounds if they wanted to, yet they didn't. I wouldn't say that they exactly, had themselves on a leash, but, it was almost like, they didn't quite want to necessarily go for the jugular, even though, 4-0 is a massively heavy final score.
I wanted the jugular, 4-0, Liverpool, Manchester United. That's salt in the wounds. As a United fan, that is, oof. The fact that it wasn't 10, I'm grateful for. But 4-0 in the Premier League, ouch.
You could tell when it got to 4 that they suddenly clicked again, because they thought, actually, we could do them 5-0 home and away here. And that was suddenly there was a few minutes when Salah had scored the 4th, which I hated, because you'd had all of the starting front three had scored one and assisted another, and Salah ruined the satisfaction of that. But for a minute they were thinking, yeah, no, actually we'd quite like 5 at home and 5 away. But I do agree with you, JJ, that there was certainly a moment early in the second half, and you could see like Van Dijk getting absolute pelters from Klopp, where they needed to switch on. But I just think part of that was that they didn't quite know how to process this sort of game. It was too easy for them. This is more like kind of how you see it sometimes, don't you? When like City are often quite guilty of this, of like 2-0 up against a good team, an average team, sorry, and they just make it a bit more difficult for themselves. And that felt like what Liverpool were doing. But then, Mane's excellent goal, and they were cruising again. And
I hear that, but this Manchester United team, just the display today, it was like watching the walking wounded. And in some ways, I wonder if the Liverpool players felt sorry for them. And when you're on the field and you're seeing a team just wilt like United did, there comes that decision and that fine line that you walk of, all right, ref, just blow the whistle. Let's move on to the next match. And there also comes of, you know what? These are one of our biggest rivals in history. Let's put them to the sword. And that 4th goal, seeing it 4-0, that sends a message to the rest of the Premier League, most importantly, Manchester City, that, hey, this title race is going to go down to the wire. I said it before on Qué Golazo. I'll say it again. When Liverpool put in this sort of performance against Leeds United and beat them, I believe it was 6-0 at home, that was a championship level performance. That's what champions do, is when they smell blood in the water, they make you pay. And they just have the audacity in big games to say, you know what, there's another gear we can go to. We're in 3rd gear. We can take it to 4th or 5th. And this Liverpool team is one of the scariest teams in the world right now.
That we should also say that you mentioned going up that level and getting those goals. They've now got a +9 goal difference advantage on Man City. Obviously, we know City can cut into that quite swiftly if they find the right opponent. But functionally, that's another point. They're obviously 2 points ahead, and we don't know. Who knows how this season will end and what will decide it. But basically, they've tonight they've earned themselves what may as well be an extra point.
Well, I love the point you made there, and sorry to interrupt, JJ, but could that draw against Manchester City, could that be the result that pips the title and puts the pressure? Because that draw puts the pressure all on Manchester City. City's been in front for most of the entire season, doing it without a center forward, but all it takes is for one slip up. Injuries to Kevin De Bruyne, injuries to Kyle Walker. All it takes is for one slip up now where that draw looks like 3 points instead of one in a game where they didn't play their best, in a game where City probably should have won. And I think, could we be talking about that at the end of the season?
I'm going to turn the order around, and I'm going to go to Mike first and then to James. I mean, do you think that part of the result here is caused by the fact that Liverpool still have something to play for? They have their European season as well as fighting for the title race, whereas United, there is very little that would motivate them to continue performing, left to play for this campaign.
I think that, yes, Liverpool have so much to play for, but starting with United, they're a team in disarray. And when your leading goal scorer has a personal issue, a family issue like that, and just gut-wrenching whenever you lose a loved one, especially just one of your children, it's just gut-wrenching. That affects the player, that affects the entire camp, it affects the entire locker room, it affects the manager. As a manager, now you're going in, those are goals you don't have. And as teammates, it weighs on you, because as teammates, you have kids. It weighs on you in the midst of a really difficult season to begin with, let alone you're going up against your arch rivals in Liverpool. And for Liverpool, they are a team that they're playing with a point to prove. So much has been said about, this is Manchester City's season. Can they do the unthinkable and go and win that Champions League, the coveted Champions League? Can they do this? And Liverpool, they've had such a swift turnaround. And this is a Liverpool team that sustained a lot of injuries last year. A lot of naysayers, a lot of doubters saying, but they won the Premier League in a COVID season. Can they do it in a season where there's fans in the stands? And their manager is just getting the best out of them. I thought they were very smart in the January transfer window to go after Luis Diaz, a player that, just as a Manchester United fan, it was banging my head on the door screaming, why are we not going after players like this that don't cost you 120 million euros? Liverpool have been smart in the transfer window to add depth, and they did that with Diego Jota, another January transfer window signing. They're using the market to just intelligently in summer and in the January transfer window, and it's making all the difference. It's yielding good fruit.
I think you could make the case that they have 4 of the best 10, probably even less than 10, 4 of the best 10 forwards in the Premier League. Luis Diaz is playing so well. I mean, you saw him at Wembley on Saturday, and he is a joy. He's the sort of player that, has you laughing in your seat. He's playing so well that he's keeping Diogo Jota out of the team. Mane's doing the same. Salah is back among the goals and surely be rounding back into form soon. That is an awe-inspiring array of options. And, further back, you've got Thiago in the form of his life since coming to Liverpool at the very least. Fabinho, Henderson, there were significant, he made 2 changes in key areas with Joel Matip and Jordan Henderson coming in. And Liverpool were better, if anything, than they were in taking apart City. This team is in the groove. I still think they have the tougher run in. I still think, not just the Merseyside derby, which I think they'll find quite easy, but Newcastle, Tottenham with something to play for. I still favour City, but right now, Liverpool have got the weapons to win every single game between now and the end of the season.
I'm glad that you mentioned Liverpool's attacking array, because I was going to save this question to last minute, but I may as well throw it in now. Normally around these kind of big games, you see a lot of stuff going around on social media, like how many players from one team would get into the starting 11 of the other team. And I think it's a legitimate question we can ask at this moment in time about, this United side. How many of those players would get anywhere near, the Liverpool, maybe even squad, let alone starting 11?
None. Absolutely none. It's not even close. And if you have that United squad at full fitness, it's still none. And I think we can take maybe 3 or 4 that kind of like get off the two or three that get off the bench. Like Bruno Fernandes is just really fallen off a cliff. I have to say, I think he's been quite poor this season, even though the numbers look good. I think there's a lot of wasted possessions that come in creating those numbers. That midfield, I was thinking this, I mean, I'm sure JJ, you'll have your views on Paul Pogba as well. But when he came off, and I feel like maybe that's the last we'll see of Paul Pogba in a Manchester United shirt, and it was him being subbed off, having spent 10 minutes next to Nemanja Matic, who wants to go but should have gone years ago and probably shouldn't have been signed in the first place because he was too old and signed just for Jose Mourinho. And I just thought, have we ever seen Paul Pogba put in a position to play like the Paul Pogba we saw at Juventus, like the Paul Pogba we sometimes see with France? Has he ever? And his career is now like, he's looking at his post-prime years coming around the bend soon. And I don't think we've ever, in a Manchester United shirt, seen a run of games where Pogba has been put in a position to be his best self. He's not blameless, but like, for me, most of the blame goes to United. And I know I veered off track there, but he's another that you would think, and certainly a few years ago, Klopp would have surely been dying for a player like Pogba, but probably doesn't get in their squad now.
Well, I want to address the Paul Pogba scenario and situation. It's player and club alike that are at fault for this. I think of the distraction of the contract situation. Will he sign? Won't he sign? And Ole was getting some of the best out of Paul Pogba that any manager has gotten from him for a stretch. You saw him play in a diamond midfield, which Juventus, in that last run in 2015, when they made the Champions League final, they played a diamond midfield. They played in the Champions League final. They played in the semifinal, a diamond midfield. Paul Pogba playing on the left-hand side. Ole put him on that side. And you started seeing glimpses of that magic. That first game of the season, Paul Pogba playing in that box-to-box role, playing with freedom. The first game under Mourinho, where they ran riot. You saw Paul Pogba, the flashes of Paul Pogba. Paul Pogba's biggest out is the French national team. At the end of the day, he's a World Cup champion, and he can save himself for the World Cup. He's going to be in Deschamps' plans no matter what. And now, has he earned it this year? Absolutely not. Because of injuries, because of form, because his mind is somewhere else, because of pending contract stuff. I think Paul Pogba is still a world-class player. I think a world-class player is in there. But sometimes you just have to cut your losses as players and club. I think this Paul Pogba scenario is dragged on way too long. I think if you were going to cut your losses, last season would have been the best possible time. You came in second place. You squeezed out just about every bit you're going to get out of a player like that with everything that's gone on at Manchester United, and then you move on. Now, regarding the question at hand of which players make the bench, oh, man, how do you say hell no in different languages? Spanish, French, JJ, you can help with French. I think across the board, it's just hell no. They couldn't even, players would be struggling to make the 18 for Liverpool in their current form. Now, these United players in form, these United players on any given day, Bruno Fernandes definitely, I think, would make it in form. He's a player that gives you something different. But since Cristiano Ronaldo has come to Manchester United, Bruno Fernandes seems a shadow of himself. There's a correlation there. When Ronaldo hasn't played, Bruno Fernandes is a goal-scoring midfielder that shows up because the focus of the team isn't get the ball to Cristiano at all costs. A Cristiano Ronaldo that's scoring goals and making things happen for himself is a limited Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah, that's there's some really good points from both of you. I do agree with Mike regarding Pogba. And it feels really frustrating because it's almost like you knew that this was going to be the outcome with Pogba way, before this point in the season. I mean, even before the winter transfer window, I think we all knew that Pogba was almost certainly going to be leaving United at the end of the season at the very latest. So, now we've got to look at the task at hand, at the risk of turning this into just a chat all about Manchester United and their problems. Erik ten Hag, obviously we're still waiting for official confirmation, but he is going to be at some point the new manager of Manchester United. That's what we're waiting for to happen. looking at this situation that he's going to walk into, this mess, where does he even start with all of this, James?
Go to RB Leipzig. He's a coach. I think we should say, first of all, who's worked in a really coherent structure at Ajax that finds top young talent and gives them to him, and they fit into a predetermined style of play and a fashion. And with that, he creates magic. We've all been sitting here for the whole first half of the season. We were all raving about Ajax, and annoyingly, we were made to look a little foolish by Benfica. But you still can't argue with the performances, with the results over years, and taking one team to the Champions League semi-finals, then coming back and doing it again. If I were Erik ten Hag, and obviously he must feel he has these assurances. If I were Erik ten Hag, I would not have taken this job, because United aren't in a position to employ a coach like him. They have not got a structure in place, and they will damage his reputation. That's all I can say on the matter.
Michael Hood, are you going to be bringing Edwin van der Sar with you if you're Erik ten Hag?
Oh man, Van der Sar, Frankie De Jong, call the band back together. Everyone except Overmars. We won't even go near that situation. But Benj, you and I don't agree on quite a few things. The clubs we support, what we have for breakfast. Is it tomatoes or tomatoes? A Birmingham accent. We do agree on our style. I love your shirt. Another class James Bench shirt, by the way. I agree with you on this. I'd said this before. Right manager, wrong time for Manchester United. The club's in chaos. The first order of business, now that it looks like he's most likely going to take this job, you have to address the chaos. You have to address the Cristiano Ronaldo situation. If you have to decide ahead of time and make that known to club and player, does he stay? Is he in your plans? Is he not? There's already rumors coming out that he's addressed that, saying Cristiano Ronaldo is not in my plans. I think because of that, you're seeing a cameo performance from Ronaldo to bid for his next contract, potentially, in what we saw in the Norwich game, scoring a hat trick. Cristiano Ronaldo is chasing the record books. He's one amazing player, a player who has defied the goal scoring charts and just incredible. But I just think he's a player who wasn't really ever in Manchester United's plans, and it was a forced move, and you're seeing the domino effect. You have to decide on how quickly you're going to get Pogba, not if, how quickly you're going to get Paul Pogba out of Manchester. Those two players have to be addressed. You also have to take care of the Marcus Rashford situation. Marcus Rashford looks a shadow of himself. He looks a player that has lost a ton of confidence, if not all confidence. He's not really running in beyond. When he checks, he's kind of checking, but doesn't really want the ball. And I saw flashes of that in some of the recent games coming off the bench. And it might be time for Marcus Rashford to either find greener pastures elsewhere. I never thought I'd be saying that after that PSG knockout round penalty kick that sent him through, where Marcus Rashford was being dubbed world class, and rightfully so at that time. I think those three players, you start with that. And of course, number one on the list outside of Ronaldo, you have to address the Harry Maguire situation. For the love of God and whatever it is everyone else believes in, if Harry Maguire is captaining Manchester United again next year, oh boy, I'll be doing more than ranting on the Qué Golazo show. You don't want to see that side of me. This water bottle is going to be filled with adult water.
Well, I'm intrigued, but this is just one part of a big midweek slate of games. So let's have a quick look ahead to Wednesday's clashes, and we've touched on Manchester City already. So let's start with them against Brighton. James Bench, what are you expecting from this game? More of the same from City, or are you expecting them to run up a cricket score and try to eat into the goal difference you spoke about that Liverpool are sitting on right now?
I don't think this will be the game to score lots of goals. I think you'll be pleased if you get a win here. And I'm sure City will, but this is going to be tough. We saw against Spurs last week that Brighton are really coming into their own. They're a hard team to score against. They don't give up lots of chances. They keep the ball well. Their real issue is they don't always take the chances they make, but they have done in the last few weeks. So I would take very little for granted here. City will probably get the job done, but this is going to be a tough one. And it's one where they might drop points.
And I love this slate of weekends, and I love this time of year in the English Premier League because now you're playing for things that matter. And this year, what makes it so different from previous years is there's battles at the top, and there's battles in the relegation zone, and there's battles for Europe. It's just one of the most competitive years in Premier League history. Keep an eye on that Chelsea-Arsenal match as well. Yes, there's a lot at stake with this title run-in, and I agree with you, Benj, that City, they're going to have to earn this one against Brighton. And I think they'll be up to task. Brighton's going to make it very hard. They have Neil Maupay to come off the bench. He's lost form a bit, but he's a player that all it takes is a half a chance. I've been a big Trossard fan. I think whether you play him as attacking mid, I think a big team's going to come for him. If not this summer, next year, most likely. But keep an eye on those first two matches in the lineup. Chelsea-Arsenal. Oh, boy. Those Gunner fans, you Gooners, oh baby, you were spared your blushes because a one Tottenham decided to get very Spursy at the weekend. It's just, I think it's going to go down to the wire at the top. It's going to go down the wire for fourth place, and of course go down the wire in the relegation battle.
Well, I'll hand over the final say on Chelsea-Arsenal to James Benj.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal pretty much need a miracle. The possibility that Takehiro Tomiyasu might be back, it would help. Certainly they look like they lack a bit of balance at fullback, but without Partey and without Tierney, this team is a shadow of itself. Mikel Arteta is just coming up with ever more complicated ways to try and get back to something that works. I mean, they have to get something. A point really would be a massive boost, but I can't see it.
All right. Well, Jonathan Johnson here with James Benj and Mike Lahoud. We're going to take a quick break here on Qué Golazo, and we'll be right back with you.
Ladies and gentlemen,
may I have your attention?
I am honored to be here.
my appointment is a 4-year
Sentence?
term.
They want to turn me into a Black Martha Stewart?
You kept your political dreams a secret from me.
I'm your wife, not one of your girlfriends.
I'll choose my causes, understood?
Madam First Lady.
Welcome back, everybody. Jonathan Johnson here, joined by James Benj and Mike Lahoud on Qué Golazo. And now we've been chatting about the Premier League. We're going to look at Inter Milan against AC Milan in the Coppa Italia semi-finals. We've got Juventus and Fiorentina to look forward to, but we'll get back to that later. And in the first of the semi-finals, you had Inter running out 3-0 winners against AC Milan. Big result that, obviously, a Milan derby, prizes don't come much bigger than place in the semi-finals. So Inter through, AC Milan out, and Inter continuing this resurgence that they're enjoying of late. Mike Lahoud, I'm going to go to you first and see what you make of the result and the performance, and just generally the way that Inter's shaping up towards the end of this season.
First and foremost, it's Lautaro Martinez's world, and we're all just living in it when it comes to the Coppa Italia. World-class, first-class performance by him. A player who's been inconsistent at different times in this season. I think it was a gamble to play Joaquin Correa and Martinez, two Argentine players who understand each other. A lot of times when you have your countrymen side by side, there's creativity, there's understanding that sparks, and just lethal. That goal that he had, what a golazo. First time strike, full-time volley. Wow, just golf clap for that. But what struck me about this game was that fight, that belief, that just togetherness that you saw at Anfield in the Champions League. It's carried through. They didn't get through to the next round, but there was a statement, there was a level of belief that's, I think, has really been contagious for this Inter team. Of, you know what, if we can go and do that and have that sort of performance at Anfield, we're not out of this yet. And they were dominant in this game.
Yeah, I mean, Lautaro is, as you say, he's been up and down, but I thought two phenomenal finishes. I really like the first one, not just for his finish, but you see how Inter kind of falling into those 3-5-2 grooves of using the wing backs to really stretch any defense as wide as it can go. And you see the ball comes from the left, ends up with Damian on the right, and AC Milan have just been pulled too far wide, and Lautaro then has got the space to get an excellent volley away. I mean, I think maybe he could have taken a touch, but all the better for us viewing public that he didn't. Yeah, Inter look at a groove, like it's just result after result after result. I think the title-winning mentality that they built under Antonio Conte, sometimes it just clicks back together, and it feels like that's where Inter are, and where teams like Milan and Napoli feel pressure because they've not done it before. Inter know exactly what is needed to get across the finishing line.
Oh, and you see Inter as well when you're looking at the Serie A table now, up in second, just 2 points behind AC Milan. I think maybe the most surprising thing about this was the fact that it was 0-0 from the first leg, and then for Inter to just go and blow AC Milan out the way they did in this second leg. I mean, you've got Juve Fiorentina to look forward to tomorrow. Juve already 1 goal up in that, but Inter, it just feels like they're now potentially going to round into maybe enough form just to sneak the title away from Milan. They've got that game in hand. I was speaking about it on the pod a week or so ago. It just feels like it's going to be crucial now. And this, Inter side, it might not be the sort of the traditional trophy haul that they're expecting with without the Super Coppa, but still, they still have potential to bring home plenty of silverware on the Italian front this season. And I think it's certainly something that many of us weren't expecting to be saying about them at the beginning of this campaign, guys.
Yeah, I think this is an Inter team that your manager left. That's a big loss when you have a title-winning manager, someone like an Antonio Conte, who brought in players that he did. Your leading goal scorer, Serie A, it sounds such an American voice, Serie A player of the year, Romelu Lukaku, went to London, sitting on the bench at Chelsea now. But those are 2 massive pieces that would cripple most teams around the world. Imagine if Robin Lewandowski left Bayern. Unthinkable. So to have this sort of resurgence at this point in the season, to be able to be on the cusp of not only potentially make it interesting, almost maybe winning a title, but also being able to do a double, that's miraculous.
Yeah, I'm slip of the tongue when I said that Inter weren't Super Coppa winners. They, of course, they were. James Benge. Now, looking ahead to the next semi between Juve and Fiorentina, what are you expecting from this one? And also, looking a bit further ahead to the final, who would you say would be your favorite? Especially if Juventus make good on that 1-goal lead that they've got from the first leg.
Yeah, well, it's Max Allegri defending a 1-goal lead, isn't it? So I think we know how tomorrow's game is going to go. This is his idea of heaven, isn't it? Like, just give me something to sit back on, and I'll get Chiellini and the gang to do the rest. Going into the final, it's a tough one, isn't it? I think Juventus are still a work in progress, and whilst Inter are not what they were, like kind of as Mike said, they know what they're doing. They know what to get back to. I think Juventus are still, trying to work out what are our new principles post winning everything. As we try and develop a new team. So I would feel pretty confident that kind of if it's the Coppa Italia final, I think it'll be that Inter would be my favourites. But you never know. I mean, Fiorentina have been, surprising everyone. Obviously, they lost Vlahovic, but is it Cabral? Really excellent pickup for them. And, we know how much Fiorentina hate Juventus, and even without their own fans in the Artemio Franchi, they are going to be determined to ruin Juventus's party and ruin Vlahovic's party, no doubt.
I just want to add.
Go
I always have an extra point or 6. Must be the coffee. Just to add, what a final that would be. Should Juve get through? I expect Juventus to get through. But Max Allegri, this could be something to salvage for his first season back at Juventus. And Allegri's a savvy enough manager that once Juve get in the final, he'll have something. He'll look to be the disruptor for Inter Milan. But Inzaghi, he's just what he was able to do with Lazio, and just some of the cup run-ins that they were able to have under a Lazio team. They didn't have the same sort of stars that this Inter team has. I think it's going to be one heck of a matchup, but I can't help but favor Inzaghi. He's able to just get more out of players and just get them back to resurgent form than I think maybe Max Allegri might be able to. It's been a topsy-turvy sort of season for Juve. Just when you think they're about to get going, something happens, and man, this is why you play the games. But for this to be happening in Serie A, where now there's excitement in the cup run-in and there's excitement in the league run-in, this is why I just can't stop using the word resurgence. There's a resurgence in Italian football again, and I love it.
Well, we're not quite at the moment whether they're going to be deciding the silverware just yet, but some potential silverware up for grabs this week is in Ligue 1, where PSG finally look like they're about to clinch a record-equaling 10th title. They beat Marseille over the weekend in Le Classique, and now they've got Angers in midweek and Lens coming up at the weekend. We'll see if they're able to clinch the title in either of those two games. They'd be without Neymar and Messi if they do manage to do it on Wednesday against Angers, but I'm not going to get your guys' thoughts on the match. There's a potential bit of controversy brewing in France about whether PSG or not end up putting the star above the badge on the shirt. Quite trivial to some, but also when there's so much debate surrounding PSG and how seriously they take domestic competition, many feel like it's a bit disrespectful towards French football that they wouldn't do the same as Saint-Etienne. And I'm actually just wondering what you guys would make of that. Do you think it's something that, the PSG should be doing, or, is it each to their own? Because there is some talk about maybe the fact that they'll have the star sort of inserted on the sleeve into the league badge, but there are many feeling they should do it the traditional way, sort of like when a club wins a European title or when they win 10 domestic titles, that they have that star inserted above the badge. So I was just wondering, James Benj, your thoughts on that?
I think all the star stuff is complete nonsense. I think it works in Serie A, doesn't it? Because there's like a clearly defined 10 titles. You put a 10 Scudetti, you put the star above your badge. Kind of in the rest of the world, you kind of see any old nonsense goes. I seem to remember Manchester United, like in the early 2000s, when they had, or at some stage, put one star above their badge, and Liverpool just responded by putting 3 above it. I think for PSG, having that star would sort of serve to emphasize that. Like, for me, it would serve to emphasize that the defining project of this club, winning the Champions League, has not happened yet. And, who knows when it will happen, if ever. I hate to break it to you, JJ. Like, it's I think you could have 5 stars if you want, have 10, have none. It's...
Shout out to Rafa Cardenas for your comment of PSG should put a barrel of oil on their shirts. But I think when I think of this, I think you have to respect tradition. You have to respect football. Yes, your prized possession is the UEFA Champions League, but don't belittle winning a league title. You're in France. You can't help but play your opponents. You have to play in Ligue 1. That's the league you belong to. Now, should anything change, you can maybe go to FIFA or UEFA and petition if you want to, have more respect around the league that you play for, and petition to go to the La Liga and whatnot. You can't do that. I think you have to honor. I think it's just respect for football, respect for the rest of the league, because at any given moment, the tide will turn, and the tide can turn. It happens to every team. We look at the Premier League teams. We look at even Barcelona. They went through a dip in the mid 90s after win the European Cup, and then they went through kind of the forgotten age. I think respect the game and do the honorable thing. put the star. Different leagues do different things, but a 10th title, that's amazing.
Is it like a defined tradition, JJ? Because I mean, as you say, like if they're matching Saint Etienne's record, I guess Saint Etienne are the only one who've done well enough to get there.
I'm glad you brought that up because you've got Saint Etienne who've got the star above their badge for the league, and then you've got Marseille, PSG's bitter rivals, who have the star but for the Champions League,
Which they really shouldn't have. Let's be honest.
the only
PSG are putting a barrel of oil. Maybe Marseille need to have a syringe.
Oh, come on.
I mean, this is another part of the debate. You know, would PSG be more willing to put the star on if they had won the Champions League, say back in 2020? And I guess the only way that we'll find out is depending on which one of however many kits PSG decide to have next season actually has a star featured on the front of it, and whether PSG or not actually win the Champions League in the next couple of years, and then face that dilemma themselves. So we'll move on from the PSG badge chat to one of our final topics of the evening, and that's Fulham, everybody's favorite yo-yo team, clinching promotion back to the Premier League. Alexander Mitrovic has been filling his boots again this season. So the win over Preston, that sees Fulham, the Cottagers, confirmed back to the Premier League, which means that everybody will definitely have that on their away days list for next season, because we know that Craven Cottage is one of the favourite venues for the neutrals and our own James Bench.
They're getting a swimming pool by the Thames. It's like they're just completely leaning into let's be the best away day in all of football. Like Mike, we're going to have to get you out to Craven Cottage. It is the loveliest ground
I'm
you
for
will
it.
ever go to. Sadly, I feel like we might need to do it quickly if you want to see top tier football. It's hard to know because, like, Marco Silva's done a fantastic job, and getting Mitrovic, to nearly a 40-goal season or a 40-goal season. I think it is 40 now. It's a remarkable achievement. And I know that Mitrovic was pretty unhappy with Scott Parker when they got relegated last season, thought he never got the chance. I think the truth is in that first season they were up, he did get looks, and, Fulham did not manage that season at all well, but he didn't really... He looks like he's going to be a striker that's trapped between being too good for the Championship and not quite good enough for the Premier League. There's good players, but a fair few of those players we've seen not quite do it in the Premier League. We've seen Fulham mess up their recruitment, and then even the players that they got right last time, when I thought that Areola, Anderson, Tosin Adarabioyo, good players, it just never quite worked. I do hope I'm wrong. And at least now they have time. In years gone by, it was sort of, it was all coming together a bit quickly with the COVID season. Then we're winning the playoffs. It all eats into your time. They've known for a very long time that they're going to the Premier League. So good recruitment and keeping and trusting in good players. They might prove me wrong, but I fear that come 2023, 24, I fear they'll be back in the Championship.
I think they're going to learn from what they did wrong last time, which was they had money and they tried to throw money to solve their relegation problems. They just had an influx of foreign talent that I think isn't always the answer to survival. Very rarely, I think, is the answer. You have to have that fine balance between English talent, the grafters, the players that are just going to be your character guys, and then those sort of international flavor, just creative artistes. Of course, we're going to just continue that PSG vein with my fake French accents. I know, Benj, you always love when I pull a foreign accent, so I'll stop right there. But this is monumental for Fulham fans. I want to give a quick shout out to my boy Cam Norris. Cam, I know you watch the show, so shout out to you. I know you've been just a faithful Fulham fan. And Fulham fans everywhere, this is a day of celebration. It seems right to have them back in the Premier League. Craven Cottage I've never been, but all of my friends and even family that I have in London, they say it's just a hallowed ground, just famed ground. And Craven Cottage and the English Premier League, they just seem to go together. And I'm delighted for this news.
Speaking of going together, we'll move on to one final topic, and that was the disappointing news, I guess, on Monday that the 1-0 defeat to Queen's Park Rangers confirmed that Derby County won't be pulling off the unthinkable and surviving in the Championship. Wayne Rooney's Rams, will be dropping down to League One. They had made it look like it might be a possibility, them sneaking survival in the Championship, but ultimately it wasn't to be. James Benge, where does this, leave Wayne Rooney and Derby now? I mean, we've seen Rooney, stay loyal to Derby at difficult times, but is he really going to stick around and rebuild in League One, or has he done enough to enhance his reputation that he might get at least a shot with a club in the Championship? I don't know, perhaps a club that ends up getting relegated.
I think he has shown a wisdom about his own career, and I'll come on to talk about what he's done at Derby as well, that kind of makes you wonder. I don't think he will rush for any job. He's been very clear that his long-term goal is to be Manchester United manager, and he's taken a great first step at Derby. Not just and really not just the results, although you have to say you're talking about huge point deductions. They would be comfortably in mid-table were it not for the actions of individuals that were responsible for this club, most of all Chairman Mel Morris, long before Rooney was in charge. And obviously I think they will be hoping, and it's not quite been clarified, but there's like one final points deduction to come. And I think, and I'm sure they will push to have that implemented this season. And I do hope the EFL and the many parties that feel aggrieved about money that Derby owes them, I hope they all see sense and just say, let's start Derby with a clean slate in League One next season. But Rooney has earned the right that it wouldn't surprise me if Burnley come calling. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe if say Chris Wilder goes to Burnley, if Middlesbrough come calling. Good teams, big teams, maybe Everton next season because Frank Lampard's not working it. But I think Rooney would be kind of well advised to take his time because good jobs will come. He has been a real galvanizing force. You saw that when he was talking to fans at the training ground after relegation was confirmed. I don't think all of us saw great management potential in him. It's hard when you're such a natural talent, but he's proved us all wrong. And despite getting relegated, I think his reputation has been hugely enhanced by a magnificent job, real grace under pressure by Rooney. And I'm certain he will have his pick of jobs very soon.
I'm glad you said Everton, because that's a team that I'm keeping my eyes on, depending on how they finish the Premier League season. And if Everton stay up, they can thank Ralphie Braniak and the entire Manchester United team for being the spark to their Premier League survival hopes. So Evertonians, just helped you out there. If they don't, I would go after Wayne Rooney. Just the character that he showed to stay with the job and to just leave it this long with so much disarray and potential distractions going on in the background. It says a lot about the type of manager he could be and potentially could be. But at the same time, I'm not sure he's ready for a Premier League job just yet. I'd like to see him have a full season with support, with funding, with backing, and getting the players that he wants. And then if he's able to push for a playoff spot, he's able to push for promotion, then I think he'll be ready to do the business in the Premier League.
Well, that just about brings us to the end of our topics. So I'll go around one more time just for final thoughts from both of you before we say goodbye. So start with James.
Yeah, I mean, still can't just cannot get over how funny Manchester United are. I see that Mo Salah is now talking about how easy they make it for him to play football. So well done, Man United. It's been a great laugh.
Man, I see that comment. I agree with that comment. And now because of you, Benj, I can't wait for the Chelsea-Arsenal match. Come on, Chelsea. Come on, Chelsea. 6-0 to the Blues. Now, I agree with you. That statement is very true. Now, I agree with you. And it was hard to watch Manchester United today as a Manchester United fan. Sad to say, it felt like a matter of time. I was hoping they'd put up more of a fight than 4 minutes and potentially 53 seconds. But for Liverpool, seeing them just take it to another level, never thought I'd say this, but this makes the title run-in that much more engaging, that much more entertaining. And I just cannot believe that we are talking about Liverpool in this way with how they started the season, especially compared to how Manchester City started the season, just widening that gap. And you can only play the teams in front of you, and there's just an element about history to be made. But let's shift a tiny bit past the Premier League. Should Liverpool not get through Villarreal for whatever reason, I think the wheels could potentially come off. So I think that tie there, that could have an implication and will have an implication on their Premier League fate.
Interesting final point from Mike. Well, that's all for today's episode of Qué Golazo. Thanks a lot for tuning in and joining James, Mike, and I. Luis Miguel Echegaray will be back, but until then, you've got us filling in the gaps. So thanks again for tuning in. Remember to like and subscribe. And until next time, it's goodbye from us.